Hello guys, thank you all for tuning in. So today I'll be talking about how I build my canvas frames for very large scale paintings. So first things first, I do have a video on my YouTube going a little bit in depth on how that process works for me. But I really wanted to make this video simply because I felt that I missed out on a lot of information. So I really wanted to take the time to talk through it with you guys and also show you guys images and some videos on how that works. So with that being said, let's get started. So first things first, the reason why I started making canvas frames was because it is cost effective. Number one, they are very cheap and it does not require a lot of money up front. You'll be looking at maybe $175 for materials, and of course if you don't have a few, you will have to invest into more, which I will be getting later into the video. So number two would be you have the freedom to create whatever size you want, which is amazing for us artists because you don't want to be restricted or walk into an art store and be disappointed that they only have the largest size that they have is a 25 by 25. So the benefit of making your own canvas frames is that you can make them as large as you want and don't have to worry about restrictions. So with that being said, you guys, let's get started to what you do need for your first canvas frames. You need a staple gun, miter saw, wood glue, wood screws, drill bit, canvas drop cloths, and scissors. So I'll be going in depth on each material and what they're used for. That way you guys can get more of an idea on how to use them. So for wood, let's start with that. I usually get my wood from any hardware store and I purchase 1x2s, and then I also get pine wood. So pine wood, 1x2s, and they're also cheaper. So next is staple gun. You need a staple gun to staple your canvas to your drop cloth. And once again, you can get this material from any hardware store of your liking, of your choice. Next, we have a miter saw. So this one right here is a little tricky because I know that some of you guys don't have a miter saw or don't know what it is. So a miter saw cuts wood. Well, the one that I have, it's a wood miter saw. So this miter saw that I got specifically, it cost me about $140. I think, I'm not sure. I'll probably link a picture somewhere so you guys can see. But I did invest money into the miter saw only because I knew that I would be doing this for a very long time. And I didn't want to depend on an employee from a hardware store to cut for me, because there'll be times to where I'll wait at the hardware store for a very long time just to get someone to cut wood for me. And I'm sure if I worked there, I wouldn't want to be cutting thousands of pieces of wood. So yeah, I would strongly suggest you invest into a miter saw. And of course, if you don't have a miter saw, if you don't have the money to get one, then of course your option is to ask around. You can ask your friends' moms, your uncles, your cousins, anyone that you think may have a miter saw. And then of course, the last resort would be go to the hardware store and have them cut it for you. I mean, there's nothing wrong about doing that, but it does save time for you and for the other person. Next would be wood glue, which is very beneficial. So even though I'll be showing you guys why you need the wood glue, but the wood glue does help the wood stick together. Even though you will be drilling nails into the wood, it is perfect for to keep the wood from splitting or breaking by any sort. So it makes it strong and sturdy for your canvas frame. All right, next would be wood screws. The wood screws would of course be for drilling screws into the wood frame. That way it could stay nice and sturdy and in one piece. Then we have the drill bit. That's another somewhat expensive tool, but it's good to invest into it because, like I said, if you do plan on making very large scale paintings, you will eventually need to invest into a drill bit. Great. So canvas drop cloth will be next. Canvas drop cloth you can get from anywhere. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter which one you get. I usually get a medium cloth. And lastly, you need some scissors. So scissors, of course, to cut your canvas cloth or anything else you need to cut during our process. So now that we have the materials, everything is laid out for you guys, let's get straight to the actual building of the canvas, the fun part, the hard part. But it is totally worth it because at the end, you have a wonderful canvas. So once you pick up the wood, depending on the sizing, I'm not sure if you want to do a 30 by 30 or a 10 by 10 or a 70 by 70, who knows what you will want to do. But of course, measurements do come into play. And like I said, if you don't have a miter saw at home or anywhere, you can of course ask the the wood, the guy, the one of the employees from the hardware store to cut them to the size that you want. So for example, if I'm planning on making a 30 by 40 canvas, the total frame size would be 41 by 3/4. Well, 41 and 3/4 by 31 and 3/4. I usually cut a little extra simply because I want to add some space. That way I can do my 45-degree angle cut. For the miter saw, there are different settings and they have different degree angles. As mentioned, I use a 45-degree angle so I can get that nice clean triangle cut. That way I can connect the corners of all wood that I did cut. And then of course, that's when I get to the drill bits and the screws and then put them together to make a canvas frame. Once we have everything cut, you will need to start getting out the wood glue, as well as the drill bits and the wood screws. So after you cut out all of the pieces, now you are drilling in the nails into all the corners. Well, now you can pull up your canvas frame, see what it looks like. And of course, if you want to add in backing, that is your choice. And after you finish cutting and getting everything together, you will need to get that drop cloth, honey. Get that canvas drop cloth, lay it out nice and flat. And then what you're going to do is you're going to put your canvas frame on top of your canvas cloth. So usually how I do it is that I make sure I leave about an inch or two, at least a 2-inch allowance. That way you can pull it around the actual wood and get it over to the back and then staple. Usually for this part, I do it myself. I've gotten used to it, but before I did it, I needed some help. So if you do have someone nearby that can help pull the canvas for you to make it tighter, then I would suggest that. But of course, if you don't, then of course you would have to do it yourself. But it's not impossible. I would definitely suggest you just do it on your own and get a feel from it yourself. But after you start stretching all of your corners and stapling them, then you are all done. So this is all together, this process will take at least maybe half a day, but this is not a rushed process. Take your time, because there's times where I rushed and I ended up messing up and measurements were all over the place and had to get new wood, and it was just a nightmare. So I would really suggest you guys take your sweet time, take a day, or take some time out of your schedule, or at least plan a day to where you could dedicate strictly to canvas making. And usually for me, I like to take an entire day off to make canvas frames, because I don't like to make one. I like to make a few of them. So now that you have your canvas frame put together, you will need your primer. So this all bottles down to, once again, what your preparation is. I use a regular white interior paint from my hardware store. I usually go to Home Depot or Lowe's. It doesn't matter what brand it is. Yeah, so I usually get that brand because I never had any problems with it, and it's such an amazing primer. Beforehand, I thought about using gesso, I'm not sure what it's called. I didn't like the overall texture, and on top of that, I had to buy more than one. As for the primer that I'm using now, I only bought a gallon, and that filled about maybe 5 canvases, and they were all bigger than 50 inches. Oh my God, 50 feet, imagine, 50 feet. But 50 inches long, and since I do squares, so 50 by 50, it literally covers more than 4 to 5 canvases. So I would strongly suggest investing into the cheapest option possible. Obviously not too cheap to where it's, not really a good brand. But yeah, just something to where you don't necessarily have to spend too much money on. After you apply your primer, you'll have to wait a day for them to dry. You definitely have to wait at 24 hours, because if you end up sanding them beforehand without drying, then it could become a little messy. And then of course you have to go over it with a second coat within that 5 or 6 hours to allow it to dry. So once you've done your 2 coats, or if you don't want to do 2 coats and you do one, you like the look of the first coat, then perfectly fine. Still wait those 24 hours for it to dry. And then I did forget something in the beginning, and that is a sander. I strongly suggest you guys getting an operated, electrical sander, because those are much faster. If you don't have access, if you don't have enough money to get a electric sander, then don't worry. There are hundreds of sanders at your local hardware hardware store, Home Depot, McCoy's, Lowe's, anywhere you can find them. And the grit that I usually get, maybe I'm wrong about this, but I haven't used one in a while, about the highest grit possible to get that rough part off and make the canvas as smooth as possible. So after you sand your canvas, of course, that's when you start painting. And after you start painting, then of course you have a beautiful masterpiece. So that will be the overall overview of how I make my canvases. It is the most simplest process, but yet the hardest, because in the beginning stages, like I said prior, I had no idea what I was doing. I went off of some research, I went off some videos, and of course I implemented those ideas, mixed them with mine into the overall process. So it does take time, it does get frustrating, but overall, it is worth it because you get to save money and you get to, of course, make any size canvas that you want. I really want to thank you guys for tuning into this video and watching my videos, period, and subscribing. But I really do appreciate you guys' support. And, the more videos I make and the more support I get, it helps this channel grow. So with that being said, you guys, thank you all for tuning in once again, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye.